Chenault, my brother and myself, Stephen Chenault. We got together at a pizza joint called Vino's. And we've been going to Dragon Con for years, and we wanted to go to Gen Con. We'd never been. We've been gaming for years, of course, since I started in the 70s something. So at any rate, we're talking about how to go to Gen Con, and Matt came up with the idea. I had been submitting modules for a while to TSR. Occasionally I'd submit a module for publication. And Matt said, well, I'm going to take some of your old stuff, write some new stuff, and publish it and get a booth there, see what happens. And from this kind of crazy conversation came the idea to form a company, and we did so. We debated whether we should do D20 or not. I didn't really know what was going on. I still played AD&D, but Mac was pretty well versed on what the industry was doing at the time, because D20 was going to be announced, or I should say 3rd edition was going to come out at that Gen Con that we were going to debut. And I wasn't real cool on the idea about doing something with Wizards of the Coast, just because the legal, and Davis was not at all. He's not into any kind of entangling alliances, but Mac wanted to. We debated, so Davis and Mac sat down and made a game system called Swords and Sorcery. And it mirrored a little bit 3rd edition, just a smidge. So that's what they did. We put that in the back of each module, printed 3 of them, Mortality Green, Fantastic Adventure, and Baku, Into the Unknown. I did a small setting book called The World, After Winter Start, The World of Air, and we did a map. Davis handed through a map for it, and we went off to Gen Con. It went rather well. We were kind of stunned at how much we sold on the floor. And then James Mishler, who was working for ACD at the time, I don't know if he recommended or if he was a buyer, I'm not sure how it all came about, but through his influence we were picked up at ACD, and Alliance picked us up shortly thereafter. And that suddenly, from let's make some product to go to Gen Con, we had a company that was selling product. Our modules debuted at the very con that 3rd edition debuted at. So the only other publishers doing anything even remotely like that were Necromancer Games, I believe, did something, but they may have done it the next year. So yeah, we debuted the same year that 3rd edition. However, our first material was not D20 material. Right. We eventually, very shortly thereafter, we converted it off the D20 and republished it with the D20 logo. But the original stuff was all Swords and Sorcery. What we did at the time is, when you look at it, it doesn't have like fires. It has, it's been so long since I've looked at it, but it's got like spell slingers and so something. We changed all the language. But we did have an ascending armor class, and there was a little bit of nuances there that someone could associate relatively quickly. So it wasn't, at the time, it wasn't at all OGL. In some small ways mirrored, but it was only like 3 pages. So you really just were given the germ. If you read the stat block, you could easily convert. Now the Siege Engine comes much, much later in the company's history, but yeah, the germ of the Siege Engine is in that Swords and Sorcery stuff. Though it doesn't really appear in print somewhat, in the mountains of notes that Davis and Mac went through in all of their just developing and trying to make this small, concise game and putting it in the back of this module. We only devoted 2 or 3 pages to that system in each module. So if you bought the module, you had this little system here. But obviously you can see the stat blocks and you're good to go. But yeah, that is the germ of the Siege Engine. That's where that begins. Now that's another side of the company's history, but yeah, that's definitely where that began. Mac Golden, at that convention, knew Mac tends to be he pays a little bit more attention than Davis and I do to things. And he knew that Gary Gygax was going to be at the show. So he took our books over to he took the DMG over to Gary to get him to sign it. Gary was working for Heckaforge at the time. We owned Heckaforge, co-owned it. And Mac had him sign, asked him to sign the DMG, and he did, very, very graciously. And Mac left our books with him, just a copy. We published these, And I can't remember the sequence of events, but several months later, Mac came to me again. This would have been that fall of 2000, and he said something to the effect that, Gary really isn't publishing much these days. Nobody's putting anything of Gary's in other than this one company, Heckaforge. And you can't find the stuff it's Gary Gygax. Why don't we just give him a shout, see if he wants to do a module for us? We've always been big fans of Gary's, and all of that stuff that he did was short, quick, to the point, hard-hitting stuff, and we loved it. And I guess I got a hold of Chris Clark, and we set up a chat room discussion, and Mac and I got in one room, and I suppose Chris and Gary in a room up here in Wisconsin, and we started talking, and I think we spent most of it talking about beer and food, other various sundries, and eventually got around to talking business, and we signed on. He had tons of projects. He was ready and just absolutely raring to go that Heckaforge had passed on. And when he pitched these products, the Canton Crew, the Gygax Fantasy World Series is what he pitched. We were like, Carolina, yeah, I will do this. This was a no-brainer for us, and from there, that's where that relationship started. I think the official contracts were signed in May of 2001, so the conversations began much earlier, you know, back in November, I'm not sure exactly when, but it both distracted from and saved the company. When Gary did the Gygax Fantasy World Series, when he gave them to us, he had 3 of them finished and a whole bunch of them in the works. And the Canty Crew, when we did it, we converted it to D20. And the D20 was just the explosion. The boom was just, this is 2001, so the boom's just really beginning to pick up speed, and in 2002 it's just rolling. But the GFW series quickly developed its own legs. It was a D20 book, but it sold also because it was a Gary Gygax book, but it's also a very, very useful tool for GMs. When the Candy Crew came out and blew this socks off of anything else we did. So what happens is, as the D20, we do D20 on one side, we're doing Gary Gygax on the other side, and then we're putting the D20 logo on his books. It's not D20. I mean, anyone who looks at this stuff knows. I think the D20 license requires you have 5% of your page count had to be open. Right. And boy, we were hard pressed to get 5% open. I mean, we worked hard just to get that, because it was just information for GMs and players to expand and build their games and campaigns. And so it wasn't really mechanic driven at all. Right. Kind of encyclopedic information. And so as the D20 explodes, we're doing D20 here, we're doing Gary Gygax here, and so it kind of doing that stuff a little bit distracted from doing D20, which is a very fortunate thing for us, because it created and Gary knew this. Gary wasn't under any illusions of what was going on. I remember talking to him way back in 2001. He told us, this is what's going to happen with D20, and sure enough, it happened to D20. He knew that there was no quality controls on it, or should say there was no controls on Wizards of the Coast, so that eventually it's going to snowball. You're going to get everybody doing it because they can. And when printing got cheaper, you know, and it was a good thing in some ways, but it was a bad thing in other ways. He knew this, and he had kind of told us this. So we did the GFW series, we did the D20, and when D20 Glut hit and crashed, and it was fast. I mean, it was overnight. We were in the middle of a print run, actually, kind of, when everybody knew it was coming. We just didn't know when, and the sales just vanished, just overnight vanished. But we still had the GFW series. It actually got us through that dry period as we were developing the Castles and Crusades system. So it was Gary's wisdom really told in the way he pitched, organized, and managed that.